The Two Marys. Mary worked for a company that tended the flower beds at New York's train stations. One morning after roll call, her manager called her aside. "Mary, I'd like you to switch stations. I want you to take charge of Riverside Station. The Harlem 125th Garden will be handed over to a new hire." The new hire's name was also Mary. Because she was smaller and younger, people began calling her Little Mary. Little Mary had grown up surrounded by the light of faith. She was polite, quick to learn, and her quiet diligence soon caught the eyes of commuters. "That new girl's a blessing," they would say as they passed. One day, as the two sat on a bench eating lunch, Little Mary said, "I see the Virgin Mary every year." Mary laughed. "In your dreams?" "No, in Wisconsin. At Our Lady's Hill. The Virgin appears there all the time." Mary's heart stirred. "I want to go. I want to see her." "Then come with me next time. My boyfriend will drive us." In the days leading up to the trip, Mary found herself restless. Each evening, watering the flowers, she remembered the woman she used to be, burning with faith, losing friends, and finally cooling into silence. Now, that old warmth flickered faintly again. At 4 in the morning, Little Mary's boyfriend arrived to pick her up. He was a timid but cheerful man who immediately spilled his coffee and yelped, "Hot! Hot!" making both women laugh. "It's a long drive," he said. "Let's make it a good one." On the road, the two Marys talked about faith. "Have you ever doubted God?" asked Little Mary. "Many times," said Mary. "I never have. God's always right beside me." Mary looked out the window. "But sometimes you pray and nothing changes. God stays silent. God's talkative," Little Mary said. "Whenever something's wrong, he always speaks to me. I've never heard him. Maybe you were too busy to listen." Their conversation kept missing each other's rhythm. "Do you think God tests us?" "Tests us? No. God isn't a teacher, he's a father. I've felt abandoned more than once. But you're still here. People who are truly abandoned don't plant flowers." When they reached Madison, Little Mary grinned. "We'll isolate my boyfriend in a single room and have a girls' night." "Isolate? That sounds harsh," he muttered, lugging his bag away. That night, the two women sat on their beds, hugging pillows and talking. "What does God's voice sound like?" Mary asked. He just talks normally. When I call out, he says, 'What's troubling you, my child?' Sometimes it's the wind, or someone's laughter. And sometimes, it's the smell of burnt pancakes." "Burnt pancakes? Sure. When they burn, he's telling me, they're burning." They burst into laughter. But when the laughter faded, Mary felt a small ache in her chest. "I still can't hear him," she whispered. The next day, they drove to Our Lady's Hill. By noon they arrived, and the boyfriend said he'd return the next day before driving off. The hill was quiet. The wind brushed the grass, and distant bells echoed. Golden light slipped through the clouds, then vanished again. The two Marys folded their hands in prayer to the sky, to the wind, to the setting sun. "The Virgin appears at dusk," Little Mary whispered. Soon, a soft radiance filled the cave. A woman in white stood there. The Virgin Mary. They knelt and prayed. The Virgin said nothing, only smiled, and slowly dissolved into the light. Tears streamed down Mary's face. "Amazing grace, that such a wretch as I should be wrapped in grace." The next morning, the boyfriend came to pick them up. On the way home, Little Mary gazed out the window and said quietly, "It's a pity he couldn't see her. But when someone who doesn't believe is nearby, the Virgin stops appearing for a while. I hope she'll come again next year." The words pierced Mary's heart. Maybe the Virgin's silence had been her fault, her own lack of faith. When she returned home, the vision already felt distant, like a dream. But the next morning, standing before the flower bed, she folded her hands and whispered, "God, please let these flowers bloom today." The Virgin had not been an illusion. That light still lived within her heart. Her prayer was small, but it carried softly through the air. The flame of faith had begun to glow again, quietly, within her. That afternoon, the boyfriend came to pick up Little Mary, tripped over the garden hose, and fell face first into the mud. Little Mary burst out laughing, and Mary joined her. As she laughed, Mary thought, "God really is talkative."
Thank you for watching until the end.